Radio is an intimate storytelling medium, and when it bonds with one of the finest storytellers of our times, the result is sheer magic. During these times of social distancing, All India Radio hopes to bring you some comfort, some connection, with an exclusive story reading series, Bonding over the Radio. Coming up is the pick of the day, voiced by the author Ruskin Bond himself. The title of the story is
Remember this day. If you can get an entire year off from school when you are 9 years old and can have a memorable time with a great father, then that year has to be the best time of your life, even if it is followed by sorrow and insecurity. It was the result of my parents' separation at a time when my father was on active service in the RAF during World War II. He managed to keep me with him for a summer and winter at various locations in New Delhi, Haley Road, Atul Grove Lane, Scindia House, in apartments he had rented, as he was not permitted to keep a child in the quarters assigned to active personnel. This arrangement suited me perfectly, and I had a wonderful year in Delhi, going to the cinema, quaffing milkshakes, helping my father with his stamp collection. But this idyllic situation could not continue forever. And when he was transferred to Karachi, he had no option but to put me in a boarding school. This was the Bishop Cotton Preparatory School in Simla, or rather, Chota Simla, where boys studied up to class 4, after which they moved on to the senior school. Although I was a shy boy, I had settled down quite well in the friendly atmosphere of this little school, but I did miss my father's companionship, and I was overjoyed when he came up to see me during the midsummer break. He had a couple of days' leave, and he could only take me out for a day, bringing me back to school in the evening. I was so proud of him when he turned up in his dark blue RAF uniform, a flight lieutenant's stripes very much in evidence as he had just been promoted. He was already 40, engaged in codes and ciphers, and not flying much. He was short and stocky, getting bald, but smart in his uniform. I gave him a salute. I loved giving salutes, and he returned the salutation and followed it up with a hug and a kiss on my forehead. "And what would you like to do today, son?" "Let's go to Davico's," I said. Davico's was the best restaurant in town, famous for its meringues, marzipans, curry puffs, and pastries. So to Davico's we went, where of course I gorged myself on confectionery as only a small schoolboy can do. "Lunch is still a long way off," said my father, "so let's go for a walk." And provisioning ourselves with more pastries, we left the mall and trudged up to Monkey Temple at the top of Jacko Hill. Here we were relieved of the pastries by the monkeys, who simply snatched them away from my unwilling hands, and we came downhill in a hurry before I could get hungry again. Small boys and monkeys have much in common. My father suggested a rickshaw ride around Elysium Hill, and this we did in style, swept along by 4 sturdy young rickshaw pullers. My father took the opportunity of relating the story of Kipling's Phantom Rickshaw, before I discovered it in print, and then we ate at Wenger's, and then enough of ghost stories, Ruskin. Let's go to the pictures. I loved going to the pictures. I know the Delhi cinemas intimately, and it hadn't taken me long to discover the Simla cinemas. There were 3 of them, the Regal, the Ritz, and the Rivoli. We went to the Rivoli. It was down near the ice skating rink and the old Blessington Hotel. The film was about an ice skater, a pretty young Norwegian Olympic champion who appeared in a number of Hollywood musicals. All she had to do was skate and look pretty, and this she did to perfection. I decided to fall in love with her. But by the time I grew up and finished school, she'd stopped skating and making films. Whatever happened to her? After the picture, it was time to return to school. We walked all the way to Chota Simla, talking about what we'd do during the winter holidays and where we would go when the war was over. I'll be in Calcutta now, said my father. There are good bookshops there, and cinemas, and restaurants, and we'll buy more gramophone records and add to the stamp collection. It was dusk when we walked slowly down the path to the school gate and playing field. Two of my friends were waiting for me, Bimal and Riaz. My father spoke to them, asked about their homes, and then a bell started ringing. We had to say goodbye. You'll remember this day, Ruskin, said my father. He patted me gently on the head and walked away. I never saw him again. 3 months later, I heard that he had passed away in the military hospital in Calcutta. I dream of him sometimes, and in my dream, he is always the same, caring for me and leading me by the hand along old familiar roads. And of course, I remember that day. Over 70 years have passed, but it's as fresh as yesterday.
Can I just ask you a couple of questions, sir?
Yes. Right.
Why you chose to start with a story on your father?
Yes, I'd love to, because my father had a great influence on me when I was a boy. Unfortunately, I lost him when I was 10, and he died rather prematurely. But I spent a lot of time with him, and he was a wonderful father. He used to take me for long walks around Delhi and to the old monuments, tell me stories about them, give me the history. So I used to learn history from him, as well as English, because he'd give me books to read. Although I lost him at a very early age, he had a very strong influence, I think, on my development.
Mm-hmm.
And remember this day is a little vignette about his last visit to me when I was at boarding school. But I've also written about him in other stories and in a book called Looking for the Rainbow.
And I remember, sir, a story about your father's trees growing in Dera.
Oh, that's right. On a visit to Dehradun, it was during the monsoon, and there was this little island in the riverbed, and it was very bare, and so we planted a few trees there. And when I came back years later, after returning from England, they'd grown quite big, and some they were flowering trees too. So it was a moving experience.
And this story was in the collection that got you the Sahitya Academy Award, if I'm not wrong?
Yes, that's true. I forget the year now. It was quite, 20 years back or more.
And the collection was Our Trees or My Father's Trees.
Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra. Yes,
right.
Our Trees Still Grow in Dehra. And it's still in print, that book, as indeed all my books are. And all my stories, old ones, new ones, they're still around. And of course, I keep writing.
I hope you'll keep reading to us too.
Yeah, oh, certainly.
Well, I'm sure the young listeners are lapping this all up. Sir, what about your memories of being told a story or read a story?
Well, I learned to read very young, and I was fond of reading, so I don't recall much that I was being told stories. Of course, I would get a lot of information, say, from my father. Like, he collected postage stamps. He had a wonderful collection. So he would tell me the stories behind the stamps, if it was a stamp from New Zealand or Newfoundland or the Canary Islands or Solomon Islands, and he'd tell me something about those places. So in a way, I was learning geography too. So there were stories behind the stamps. So in that way, I was told stories. Otherwise, I read them from an early age. I was a great reader.
Mm-hmm. One last question from a young listener.
Yes.
He wants to know, how much time do you give to writing every day?
Oh, how much time I give?
Yes.
Well, it can vary, but I try to do something every morning. Not so much from the point of view of time, but, a sort of 500 words or 600 words, and that takes, say, 2 or 3 pages of a writing pad. If I want to do more, I'll do more, and if I'm feeling very lazy, I might not do it at all. But normally, I'm quite regular. And have been for, 70 years now, since I started writing.
Lovely talking to you, sir. Looking forward to tomorrow's story.
Good.
Will it be a funny one?
Yes, if you like.
We all look forward, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was storyteller par excellence, Ruskin Bond, reading his hand-picked story of the day in our exclusive series, Bonding over the Radio. Hope these stories bring you some comfort, some connection in these times of social distancing. Ruskin Bond needs no introduction. Much loved by generations for his enduring and inspiring writing, he is an iconic and prolific literateur, honoured with the Padma Bhushan and Sahitya Akademi Awards. Some of his works that have been adapted for film and television series include Junoon, Susanna's 7 Husbands, Saat Khoon Maaf, The Blue Umbrella, and Ek Tha Rusty. A presentation of the Central English Features Unit. This came to you from the External Services Division of All India Radio. Up in the hills of Mussoorie, it is quiet. In these days, very quiet. So what is our favourite storyteller, Ruskin Bond, doing in these times of lockdown? Writing, reading, looking out over the deserted roads, and at 12 noon every day, picking up the phone to read us one of his stories? All India Radio is happy to bring you a selection of enduring and endearing tales read by the eminent author Ruskin Bond himself. Every day, beginning 1st May, live streaming on our mobile app, News on Air, channels AIR Live News 24/7, FM Gold Delhi and Indraprasth at 7:10 AM and 10:10 PM. Also on the YouTube channel of AIR World Service at 7:30 PM and 9:30 PM. Bonding over the radio.